Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of ENN. I am yours truly, Lupe, and I am joined with the regulars of the crew, my co-pilots in this journey to the cinematic wastelands, Paul and Christian. Hey, Christian, how are you doing?
How you doing, man? Yeah, we are living through the wastelands of 2020 here. That's what.
Yes, it seems like art is imitating life, or life is
Ugh.
imitating art, whichever one. Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
Good guys, good guys. It sounds like we finally got some interesting stuff to talk about tonight. This week got a lot more interesting over the last couple of days. Looking forward to getting back at it. Feels like it's been a little while.
Yes, it has been a little while. We took a little bit of a break. The news cycle was a little bit slim, so to speak, but we are back at it like Fast and Furious sequels with some really cool topics. So this is our rundown of topics for the day. Uh, Michael Keaton is reprising his role as Batman in the DCEU. Crazy to say, but we'll talk about it. Uh, Grace Randolph recently put out a rumor, an unsubstantiated rumor, that Ryan Reynolds might be cameoing in a return to his Green Lantern role. So those are two returns in DC. Seems like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Then we're going to talk about cinema openings worldwide, and specifically, we're going to talk about Tenet, the date it's been moved to. We're going to talk about the implications of that and just our thoughts. Then coming soon section is back in effect. Coming soon section, where we break down, like new trailers, give you our instant reaction. So we're going to talk about the Snyder Cut teaser trailer. We're going to talk about Apple TV Plus's Foundation series. We're going to talk about Greyhound, which stars Tom Hanks, and we're going to talk about the new Kingsman trailer from director Matthew Vaughn. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's not bury the lead. Let's start with the hottest, most interesting, exciting, maybe controversial topic, and it's that Michael Keaton from 1989's Batman is returning to the DCEU as Batman. According to an exclusive report from THR, sorry about that. It seems like Michael Keaton is in final stages to take the role in filmmaker Andy Muschietti's Flash, which stars Ezra Miller in the titular role. So, guys, this came out of left field. Nobody was expecting this news, and it kind of blew up, Twitter for a minute. I want to hear your takes on what you think of the casting, what the implications are. So let's start with Christian.
I'll uh, I'll repeat two things that I think I say a lot, and I apologize for repeating them. Number one, let's throw shit against the wall and see if it sticks. Thank you, DC. Yeah, see if that works, and then in this case, we'll see if Twitter reacts to it. And okay, we'll pick one. And then the other thing is, we've been talking for a while. I continued to think that Flashpoint was some sort of bomb that they were going to drop on the DC universe to reset or whatever they want to call it, or launch a new side universe or whatever the case may be. If you look at it from a comic perspective, it's actually kind of cool because this might be a way for them to get their infinite Earths.
Mhm.
And what's cool about that is, let's say for a minute the Snyder Cut is going to go episodic on HBO Max, and we're not going to get just a 2.5, whatever, 3 hour, I apologize, movie. We're going to get multiple episodes and everything. The Snyderverse remains canon. It stays canon. That can be its own thing, doing its whatever it's doing. And then their DC movie universe can also go in another direction, and they can tap into all kinds of alternate and infinite Earths if they'd like to. And there's a lot of like comic influence here, because in a lot of ways, when the Justice League was really going and you had the round table, Batman slash Bruce Wayne is pumping money into it. And sometimes he can't fight the otherworldly, enemies that they have coming because he's a human, so he can't do it. So there's some really cool comic aspects to this. But from the movie side, I know we got to take this with a huge helping of salt, but this is weird. It's just so weird. I really don't know how else to say it. I liked Keaton as 1989 Batman. Burton's Batman world was not for me, but I did like his version, his take. He surprised me. As a comedic actor, I didn't expect him to be as cool in the role as he was. And the way they're talking about him coming back here in a strange Nick Fury-esque, I guess, kind of role. I'll let you guys talk about that more than me. It's very weird to me. I said, I repeat, I know we have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think there's good here because, again, you could have things like the Snyderverse and everything continue to remain canon. So could you have your cake and eat it too? Yes. And I'm really sorry, guys. I have to say it again, but it just seems to me that it's again them just chucking shit against a wall and seeing if it'll stick. So I'll leave it to you guys to talk about some of the finer points, especially how this could reach back out to the Snyder Cut. The comic fan in me, the little kid in me, kind of likes this. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. We're going to get like some Infinite Earths kind of thing, and we could branch off into a lot of different directions, but it's a little weird.
Yeah. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, weird and out of left field for sure. I'm not sure what to say about this. I mean, you try to keep a positive and open mind to it. At first, I mean, so even taking a step back, this week has been a bit of a roller coaster ride with regards to the Flash or Flashpoint movie, right? Like we started with hearing, more renewed legitimacy to the rumor that Ray Fisher was going to be reprising his role in Flash, which I think would excite most of us. Then you hear the big news that Jeffrey Dean Morgan was circling the role, and apparently that. I guess that terminology and that scoop came from a casting grid that was circulated back in December 2019. And I'm assuming that's where the renewed validity to the Ray Fisher rumor comes from, although that goes back to the Rick Famuyiwa Flash movie back when he'd posted the picture of the script with the Ezra or the Flash and Cyborg action figures on it. So he's always been believed to potentially play a role in it. And now all of a sudden that rumor's getting renewed legitimacy. Then we get the Jeffrey Dean Morgan rumor, and as a fan of the Snyderverse, I mean that's fantastic. I mean, who as a fan of the Snyderverse doesn't want to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan come back as Flashpoint Thomas Wayne? And then the idea that Laura Cohn could be Martha Wayne Joker. I mean, it just, you think, holy shit, the Snyderverse is back, and in a bigger, more riskier way than maybe ever before. And then this just kind of threw cold water on it. And you're like, okay, well, maybe this is part of Jim Lee's multiverse approach. So this could still be good, right? We're still going to get Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Thomas Wayne. Maybe this is, I guess an incremental growth on that concept. Like they're going through multiple dimensions and universes. And maybe he's just going to skim by the Burtonverse universe on his way back to the Snyderverse that we love, or whatever the new future is going to be. And then the rumor sort of grew to be, well, maybe Michael Keaton is going to be playing Thomas Wayne. And then that got into a blogger argument where it ended up the consensus being that no, Keaton's not playing Thomas Wayne. He's going to play old 89 Batman. And he might be a mentor to younger characters through a series of movies. Oh, and by the way, you're probably not getting Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Thomas Wayne anymore. The Keaton Batman is going to replace Jeffrey Dean Morgan as, that role. The whole Thomas Wayne role is gone. And so your excitement level spikes and then comes crashing down. And at this point, we really don't know what to believe. I mean, it could be any of those things, any combination of those things, any portion of that could be true. Or none of it could be true. I mean, he's technically, even these articles say the deal's not finalized. They said the Morgan deal either fell through or is not finalized. The Keaton deal, could still not happen. So there's always that out for these people that are throwing these rumors out there. And like Christian said, it sometimes feels like they're throwing all of this crap out in the same week to see which gets the better reaction before they make a decision. Like it feels like this is part of their decision-making process, which I really hope is not the case. So this could go either way, but I see a lot more risk and downside to this as a fan of the Snyderverse than I see upside. I liked Batman 89. To me, that's one of the movies in my life where it just hit at the right time. I was 13 years old when that came out. I have, in my life, very few times been anywhere near as excited for a film as I was for Batman 89. I loved 89. I liked Batman Returns. I don't need to see it come back. So this is nostalgia pandering for that subset of fans, just like the Reeve Superman fans that keep crying that Keaton was the best Batman and can't move forward. I guess this is an attempt to keep them happy. Maybe it can do so without causing a lot of harm, but I think the risk that it causes a lot of harm is much greater than any potential benefit you get from including him in this. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's something I'm missing here. I hope they're going to wow me with something I'm not considering. It feels unsettling to me, and I just it killed a lot of enthusiasm I had for this. So I don't know where I stand in terms of the majority of DC fans, how they're reacting to this, but for me, I kind of wish this news didn't happen, and I hope it kind of goes away. I don't know, Lupe, what are your thoughts on this?
I echo both your thoughts. I'm not a fan of this news. I think that in terms of them wanting to do, multiverse theory and all that kind of stuff, it's really strange when you haven't even built one universe. It's like honestly, it's
yeah, and to further that, Lupe.
Paul.
No, I was just gonna say to further that, he's not even the right age. Like, if you wanna, like, you've got to go like, you're not just breaking the timeline. You're going to a totally different universe, and it's not a universe that branched out of the same timeline, because if he's Batman, he's suddenly Batman 25 to 30 years older than the Batman you just had in your current iteration. So the branch broke way back to now have a Batman born of an origin 25 years apart from the other universe, right? Now they may just gloss over that and think people aren't going to care, but am I missing something? Is that not a kind of a big deal?
Well, if you're going down multiverse paths like Marvel has, they've always kind of had basically 1989 is 1989, no matter what. The multiverse, Infinite Earths, and DC in the comics have played a little looser with that kind of stuff, and it's just because of the way they've done it. So I hear where you're coming from. They could gloss over it if they wanted to kind of go quasi-comic Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of thing. They probably can mess with that because they're not necessarily saying multiverse necessarily. They use a different term. It's all comic crap.
But you know what I mean. Like
yeah,
when you look at Flashpoint from the from the comics or the animated film, it's an event that happens at the same point in time, but in this case, Bruce got killed instead of his father. Well, now Batman's 25 years older, so there's a whole thing, like the Waynes and everything else were born 25 years sooner. So how far back does the branch split?
I know exactly what you mean. I think you're right, Paul, in your analysis. That all right, so this is probably what they thought. It's not one. It's clearly nostalgia pandering. Clearly, but they thought, oh, this would be brilliant. We can bring in the nostalgia addicts, the fiends, like the dope fiends, and we can merge them with the current DCEU fans and have this like super powerhouse that unites everyone. But I think that while trying to please everyone, you're going to miss out on getting people to actually love what you're doing and truly fall in love with what you're doing. Because I'm so lukewarm on this. It's so shady, so dodgy to me. It's not just nostalgia pandering, it is forced. Like, this is very inorganic. It doesn't come across as authentic to me. It doesn't come across as organic or natural in any way. However, I will always say this. If the Snyderverse is able to exist on HBO Max, and we're going to talk more about the Snyderverse when we get to our coming soon section, I'm okay with this. If this is for whatever audience it's for, I'm perfectly fine. But personally, I'm not very excited about it. I think that they don't even have solid ground to stand on to be trying to build something so complicated. It's ill-advised, in my opinion. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan should have been Thomas Wayne. But you can make the argument that Andy Muschietti is trying to bring some originality to the storyline. He just doesn't want to do a beat for beat recreation of the Flashpoint comic book, which I admire, to be sincere. But I still feel like this idea is very contrived. It's very forced. It just makes you think that if Christopher Reeves was alive, you
Yes.
bet your
Yeah,
bottom
they'd find a
dollar
way to get him
that
out.
they would have found a way to do the Dun Kingdom Come, and it would have been old Christopher Reeves doing it.
Well, and I don't have any doubt that the same crowd that cries for Reeves is the same crowd that cries for Michael Keaton. You know, I don't have the statistical proof to back it up, but I have a pretty strong feeling. I mean, I have an uncle who is into film, who I tried to talk to him about the new DC films, and he had no interest in even watching them. Reeves and Keaton were the best. He didn't want to know about anything else, and that was just his mindset, like completely closed off to the possibility of anything other than Reeve and Keaton. And that's a segment of the audience, but this, I don't know if this wins them. And to me, like your best case is that Keaton is replacing Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne, because then it doesn't screw it up too bad. And to your point, Lupe, I agree that that I appreciate that they're not going beat for beat from the comic, but this is a pretty core element of it. Like, you can branch off and do it differently from there. You don't have to have all the same details about the Atlanteans against the Amazons and all of those plot points. But to me, this is, when I think of how a cinematic Flashpoint would go, and the fact that they had Jeffrey Dean Morgan in that role in BVS. I mean,
it's such a layup.
It's such a layup. That's what I wanted to see, and I was so excited when I thought we were getting it. And now we get this nostalgia pander, and I feel like that it's not only a nostalgia pander, but it's probably going to be a lazy nostalgia pander. And you brought up a really good point about trying to please everyone and pleasing no one fully. That's exactly how I felt about the Bumblebee movie. I was excited, and which was also written by Christina Hobson, which is why I bring it up. And this one is written by Christina Hobson, and they've talked about a Back to the Future tone, which also doesn't excite me. I mean, I like Back to the Future, don't get me wrong, but I don't want Back to the Future tone, and I don't want this to feel like the Bumblebee movie. And there's some serious warning signs here. And with Bumblebee, I bring that up because it was a movie that was good enough for myself, my wife, and my daughter to sit down and enjoy it, but it truly pleased no one. There was elements I liked and elements that made me cringe out of my seat. My wife could tolerate it, which is a win. She wouldn't normally tolerate a Transformers movie. And my daughter kind of liked it, but didn't love it. So everyone left making it through to the end, kind of liking it, and then never having any desire to watch it again or talk about it again. Except, me wanting to see certain scenes extrapolated into a larger film or universe, right? Where there was some really good scenes, but those I don't think were ones that you could necessarily credit Christina Hobson for. They were more the Cybertron and the look of the Transformers that I really liked. It wasn't the story or the characters so much that I loved about that film, but it was a middle ground that kind of pleased everyone. I hope to God that's not what they're going for here. I really do. And sorry, Christian, I know I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you didn't really cut me off, and I won't talk long. And I really liked Bumblebee. I actually really enjoyed it and thought it was better than the last two Transformers movies that came before it.
It was better than the last one.
It was most of the Transformers movies are not that good anyway, but that I felt was way better than what had come before the last couple of movies. But again, that's subjective. It's a matter of opinion, and that's fine.
It wasn't terrible. This wasn't great. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I hear you. I guess the only thing I want to mention is that it feels to me, and I apologize for the way this comes across, everybody, but DC continues to want to have their cake and eat it too, and still feel very directionless, regardless of how excited the Snyder Cut movement is with the announcement of the cut, and comic book fans are too. Regardless of that excitement with that, there's this lack of direction, and it's continued to be that way. Spit on the MCU all you want. That's fine. No problem. They have a direction. Sometimes it seems like they're making it up in between when they sign new deals, or they're throwing Spider-Man to the Civil War and stuff like that. But the majority of time, they at least have some sort of direction. They're mapped out where they want to go. And okay, we're going to throw the X-Men in now. All right, whatever. But this is, again, it's like they kind of don't know what they want to do. And it's, well, we didn't really get the feedback that we wanted from BVS, so now we're going to do this. And, people didn't like Birds of Prey, so now we're going to do that. Once again, here we go. Lack of direction. So let's try something. Now we can bring the Snyder fans in because, hey, guess what, guys? You're still going to be canon. And now on top of that, we can bring all these people that want Christopher Reeve and we want Tim Burton's Batman back too. So it's just, maybe there's merit there. And I told you, like a kid in a candy shop, the little comic book guy in me loves it because it's like cool, Infinite Earths, and Flashpoint went right to the New 52, and that's divisive, but the New 52 actually brought in a whole bunch of cool stuff into the comics. So yes, the little kid in me and comic fan in me is cool, but I'm tempered by, here we go again with a franchise that feels like we're getting directionless again. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, no. It's fine. I think you guys, you summed it up well. I think the general mood is that we're all skeptical about it. We're not thrilled with the fact that it doesn't seem that there is a solid overall master plan. But it remains to be seen. It might come to fruition in a very, very good way, but so far not so good. But they can right the ship. Yeah, we'll see.
I just want to add one thing to that, Lupe. I was just going to say that we've had so much good news lately, and there's this renewed faith and optimism that Jim Lee gets it and is going to make things better. So I want to hold out hope and believe that it really is just a matter of us not seeing the bigger picture yet, and that he's got a plan that makes sense and that we're going to love. And worst case, I want to believe that we're still going to get our Snyderverse on HBO Max, right? Because if that's all I get, I'm still happy,
Yeah, and that's where I think the distinction is. I think that we need to begin to look at DC not as DC as a whole, but you're going to have the DC cinematic offerings on the big screen, and you're going to have the Snyderverse on HBO Max. I am pretty sure that whatever Snyder is going to do with DC going forward is going to be on HBO Max. In our conversation about HBO Max releasing the Snyder cuts, we were sure to talk about the fact that the reason why we're getting the Snyder cut and the potential for more is because of HBO Max, not because of the studio. You cannot look at them as one holistic, hand-in-hand, kumbaya factory. No, they are two separate divisions. And so the studio division is doing the same thing it's always done. And as Kristen said, basically directionless, throwing shit up against the wall and seeing if it sticks. And if Zack Snyder continues on HBO Max, I'm very sure it's going to be more controlled. It's going to be better thought out. It's going to be more cohesive. It's going to have a very epic tapestry, and it's going to be everything that we want and more. So we'll wrap that discussion up there, and we'll keep an eye on it. And let's move on to another exciting topic, and this is a DC topic. This was breaking news. It's a rumor. So we got to say it's a rumor. It could be completely false, but the source has a very good track record when it comes to DC content, and that track record, as of late, has been actually quite stellar. So we thought it was worthy of discussion. And if it doesn't come to fruition, we'll talk about it in the future. If it does, we'll dive in deeper. So at about 5:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 23rd of June, 2020, Grace Randolph tweeted this. Now that I've heard it from a second source, it seems word is indeed getting out. And so I can confirm the Snyder Cut cameo I've been teasing is indeed Ryan Reynolds for Green Lantern. I'm hearing WB is working on putting the deal together now to make it official. So we've just talked about one, previous DC actor reprising the same role, and we're segueing into another previous DC character reprising the same role. So let's start with Paul. What do you think of this rumor? Let's discuss it. Do you think it's plausible? And if you think so, dive deeper. Tell us what your instant reaction is and what you think about it going forward.
Yeah, so I have a hard time believing it. I mean, it doesn't seem like something Snyder would do. It seems like something the studio would do. because Reynolds is obviously popular and he's got history in the role. But I feel like if the studio mandated it, they'd make some snarky, self-aware joke and some quip about how the first one was a failure, but he's back, or some nonsense like that, right? I mean, that's not Snyder's style at all. So, if this is real, if it's in the Snyder cut, I have to believe that Snyder would handle it the way he normally handles his films, which is with respect, and he'd handle the material seriously. And maybe he's trying to give Ryan Reynolds another shot to get it right. I have a hard time figuring out how that character comes into this film. The history, with the whole, if they stick to the origin or if they alter the origin, how do you address that? Although we'd have the same concerns regardless of the actor. I just find this a little hard to believe. But like you say, Grace has been pretty accurate lately. She seems to have some good sources. She's not the only one we've heard this from. I've seen this from at least one other source. I don't know if that source is quoting Grace or has their own source. And now she's saying she's a second source. So you just never know. Are these sources all coming from the same point, or are they actually, like, are sources quoting other sources, or are they all getting actual information? And if they are, and this is real, I'm a little befuddled by it, but I have the utmost faith in Snyder. So if this is real and he's in there, I'm sure Snyder will do it well. I don't think he's going to go for cringe or cheap gags or any of that kind of stuff. So I think it'll be okay. But I didn't need this, and it doesn't increase my excitement level. This is one of these ones a little bit like Keaton, where you just hold on and hope that doesn't screw things up, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, Paul, what do you think? No, Paul, Christian, sorry.
Hey, we all run together after a while. The other Paul on your on a personal level, I sometimes question, Grace and certain things, but man, with WBDC, holy crap, she seems to just nail it. So it's quite possible that this is, chalk it up and she hits it out of the park. Nobody plays the game quite like Ryan Reynolds, do they? This guy, he knows what he's doing. It wouldn't be shocking to me if he's been, if he's been part of these negotiations. I'll say this. I know it's kind of a travesty. You rewatch Green Lantern again. There's a lot that movie got wrong. It's a slow, muddled mess. It really is. And it spits in the face of Parallax and a couple other things in the comic books. But it actually gets kind of that sci-fi Green Lantern core, Star Wars-esque kind of thing right. It actually gets a lot of that.
You know what, Christian? Tell me if I'm wrong on this.
I was watching a clip of it today, actually. I was actually watching a clip today. I was watching the scene where he says the oath for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's so well done. It's so well done. I'll talk more about it, but go ahead. I didn't mean to.
Well, I was just going to throw in there, when you were talking about things that it compares to, I tried watching it about a year ago, and I fell asleep about 20, 30 minutes in. But for the first 20, 30 minutes, maybe it's a little longer, it reminded me of Guardians of the Galaxy. It felt like DC's version of Guardians of the Galaxy. Am I wrong on that?
No, it's because Ryan Reynolds has that Chris Pratt energy.
Yeah.
So
it literally felt like Guardians of the Galaxy was almost ripped off of Green Lantern, to be quite honest, when I was watching it.
Well, Guardians of the Galaxy have been around in the comic books for a long time. I think that
no, but I mean the style, the tone, the feel of the movie just felt like it was very Green Lantern. Green Lantern and Guardians of the Galaxy just felt like peas in a pod to me.
You know what? I could see that. There's a lot of similarities there. I don't know if Gunn took any of his inspiration from that movie, but there are similarities there, and especially because of that cosmic kind of space, movie that they were going for.
And
one of the things, like, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I think Lupe nailed it. Chris Pratt and Ryan Reynolds have very similar charismas. They do. But the one thing I would say to Paul's point, I think that, and maybe I'm wrong here, when you watch Green Lantern, he doesn't play it like Deadpool. He doesn't play it like a lot of other things, that he's in, where he's the comedic lead and he's, where everything's on him. Yes, he has his moments in that movie where he's being funny and he's just being Ryan Reynolds, but he's being Hal Jordan in that movie more than he's being Ryan Reynolds. Like, Wade Wilson is Ryan Reynolds, but in this movie, he's really being Jordan a lot more than he's being Ryan. And I could see him doing it justice in Snyder's version of that. Now, what that means for the future, I'll leave that to Lupe. But I don't necessarily think he'd jump in there and just be the snarky, funny Ryan Reynolds that we know. He might make a quip, but I really don't think that they would do that, especially because that was not that Green Lantern movie.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't it. That was not like, Deadpool plays Green Lantern. It was him playing Hal Jordan, and it had its moments where it was just went off the reservation, but sometimes it stayed pretty true to the comics. So, and the creation of the Corps and everything. And I liked his relationship with Sinestro, and there were a couple other things that I think they got right. So there's possibilities there. I'm sorry, Lupe, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we're not here to relitigate Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, but the movie got a lot right. It got a lot wrong, definitely, but it did get a lot right. And I think, we need to do a better job of movie fans and audiences of, seeing the whole picture. Don't just be like, oh, that film was absolute and utter trash and blah, blah, blah. Ryan Reynolds was a fantastic Hal Jordan.
He's a good Hal Jordan.
He had everything. Yeah. He has the look, the charisma for it. He played the role really, really well. Now, the suit was not the best idea because it just, although it was supposed to be something that looked alien and they had this idea, it just didn't pan out. When you see it in real life, it just didn't pan out. Also, I think Oa, the planet, although they obviously took their cues from the comic books, but when you see it in live action, it was just a bit too barren and lifeless, and there wasn't like a real culture. You just couldn't believe that it was a planet. There was just something that was just way too artificial about it. Something that Zack Snyder nailed with Krypton in depicting like a vibrant,
lived-in world.
Yeah. Exactly. Even though the source material for Krypton is usually quite stark and crystalline, and so if they had gone another direction with Oa, that could have been better. Then Parallax was just, oh my god, just it was floating diarrhea. Oh my goodness, that's like one of the worst villains in history ever. Had no personality, was devoid of any sort of true sentience or purpose. Was just that was really bad. Sinestro was freaking brilliant.
Yeah, Mark Strong did well.
One of the best castings in history. So it got a lot right. It got a lot wrong. And for that reason, I've always felt like Ryan Reynolds deserves a redo. Just like his Deadpool in the
Origins.
Origins. Everybody knew that, okay, there was stuff wrong, but people were like, look at what he did, like in the beginning, before his mouth was sewn shut and he had that horrible stuff. So people were like, he deserves a redo because we can see that there's good stuff in there, and I feel the same way. Now, the reason why I think this rumor can be true is because Mr. Rob Liefeld has been going ham on Disney. Like, he's super, super upset at Disney because, according to him, and he would know better than I, he may not know the entire truth or whatever, but he would know better than I or any of us would. He says that they're not going to do Deadpool, and there's like huge issues he's having with how they want to adapt it and if they can, and the discussions that are going on there. So whilst that is on ice, while that is not moving forward, it's a perfect opportunity for Ryan Reynolds to be like, if you guys are gonna, put my cash cow, basically my main star attraction, in jeopardy, then it opens, the way for him to do something else. And Ryan Reynolds, he's starting to remind me of The Rock in terms of working a lot and just taking different jobs and not being bound to one sort of big blockbuster role. Like he's shown that he's open to taking multiples of these roles. So I have no problem with him taking it. In terms of what Paul said in terms of Zack Snyder, I think that this is not nostalgia pandering. That's the difference. This is not because Green Lantern is not a movie that's like some sort of like beloved, iconic thing that people have been, talking about. Like, oh, why can't everything be like Green Lantern? No, this is a movie that, generally most people utterly dislike. So that's what makes me feel like this is something that Zack Snyder could do. And it does make sense. It just does. It's like it's like the Jeffrey D. Morgan thing. It's like a layup. Like it's right there. It's something that they can take. You don't even have to go through the Green Lantern origin anymore. You can just, say that movie happened. You can roll that movie into the DCEU if you want to. It's a long way in the past. People don't have to rehash that. And I think it fits. And as Paul said, Zack Snyder is going to do it. It's not going to be self-aware. It's not going to be
that's the big
that
thing.
kind of.
It can't be self-aware.
It
just can't.
Zack Snyder doesn't do that. He will never do that. It's going to be very serious. And the fun thing about the Green Lanterns and their mythology is that because they are, basically like Peace Corps for like the entire universe, it's easy to write them in and out of any story. Basically, they've been in other sectors, tending to things, and then when something is like really catastrophic, and especially if it has to do with like beings from other sectors invading others, then they can come in. So them being introduced in the Snyder Cut is going to be it's going to be seamless. I think it's going to be awesome. Now the question that we need to ask, and I want to know from you guys, is you've heard of Greg Berlanti's Green Lantern project. We heard that was untethered. It was connected to nothing else. Do you guys think that Ryan Reynolds is going to be Greg Berlanti's Green Lantern, or do you think that that's going to be something completely different? I'll start off. In my opinion, if HBO Max is going to be smarter than Warner Brothers Studio, they're going to make sure that all their DC properties are cohesive, especially the legacy ones, the big ones. You don't want to have a situation where you're having Zack Snyder's Green Lantern, then Greg Berlanti's Green Lantern, and blah blah blah. Then you're getting back to the whole messy, unstructured whole thing. So do you guys think that Greg Berlanti's Green Lantern is going to be Ryan Reynolds, or do you think it should? Let's start with Christian.
Well, I think that if I remember correctly, they said that the Green Lantern show is going to span a couple of different decades and focus on kind of like a space story and a Sinestro story. And we got a little bit of Sinestro already in that Green Lantern movie. If HBO Max is going to be the home for the Snyderverse, and as they go through this Infinite Earth kind of thing, and the movies are going to do their own thing with people being able to borrow in and out, and even the TV shows and the cartoons and all that can do it, I think it can work. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I agree with you. I think if you start introducing this, you could get a little confusion going on unless you flat out say, look, this Green Lantern Corps movie, TV show is completely on its own. Like it is just completely in its own Earth universe. Nothing. It has no connection to anything else, but it could work. That would actually be a really interesting way to introduce all of that. You say, here's some connective tissue, and now you're actually expanding on the Snyderverse, because right now all you have is the cut and nothing else. So now you could even say that entire universe there is really, we have an HBO Max interconnected DC universe. Pretty cool. With Prestige TV, by the way. So
yeah. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, well, if this is true, if Ryan Reynolds is in the Snyder Cut, it just makes sense. I mean, if you're bringing him back for the Snyder Cut, bring him back for the HBO Max series and connect it. I mean, that's going to make me more interested. Now I have no reason, I have absolutely nothing to base it on, except that as a fan, it makes sense to me that if you're going to bring him back in the Snyder Cut and he's willing to do the HBO Max series, you might as well connect the two and have them live on together and keep the HBO Max its own connected universe, their offering. So I like it in that sense. It makes me warm up a little bit to the idea of Reynolds in the Snyder Cut as well. Not just warms me up to the idea of the HBO Max series, but the two working together, I think, makes both better. Just to be clear, are we all in agreement that if Reynolds comes back, they're throwing away the movie as his origin, or is there any doubt that they might keep the original movie as his origin and say this is the same Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern?
Yeah, personally, I think if he comes back, it's the same. It's the exact same Green Lantern. It's that same origin. There was nothing wrong with the origin story. There was just something wrong with the movie. That's all.
Well, you know what? I remember, and I don't remember it well, but what remained, not to beat this movie, because you know it did have a lot of redeeming qualities. It wasn't as bad even back then. I mean, I bought the Blu-ray. I didn't hate it. I waited for it to drop down to like $7, but I still bought it. What I remember it was like the third act, I think, that I thought was laughable with some of the stuff he was creating with the ring, if I'm not mistaken. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was so uncreative. Visually, it did not look good. They didn't have like good cinematographers and artists and concept artists and designers on that project. It just with Green Lantern, like if we're going to talk of a trailer foundation, and just as a sneak peek for that discussion, my tweet instantaneously after seeing it was I tweeted at Greg Berlanti, like I put his at so he could see. I said, if Green Lantern doesn't look like this, throw it in the trash.
Well, it's direct, well, it's blunt, but you're not wrong. I guess you could salvage it, right? Like I wouldn't. So the thing now, I know comic fans are going to say, well, he does ridiculous shit in the comics too. But what I like about some of these films is that they take some of the ridiculous shit in the comics and say, well, what could this really look like if we take the camp and the goofiness away?
Plus this. How do we make it cinematic? Got to make it better.
Yes,
exactly.
And one of the things I hated about that one, if I'm not mistaken, he was making complex machinery and maybe even stuff that shot bullets. And if this is all like based on his willpower and his thought, right? Like, I apologize if I'm not a Green Lantern expert, but my understanding is that he has to imagine what he's creating with his ring and maintain concentration.
Yeah.
So to create these complex moving objects like a jet that's firing guns, I mean, you telling me he knows how to build it, every piece you need to build it, and that he can make a working gun? Like, I know I'm overthinking it a little.
You're getting
it doesn't.
No, but pull it back in a little bit, right? You can still do some cool shit without getting ridiculous. And so I just don't want to see them go down that road, right? I want to say like, and we saw Schneider, and we know Schneider doesn't do ridiculous shit like that. Like, I know he does some pretty fantastical stuff, but even look at his approach to Aquaman with the speaking bubbles, because he thought the idea of them speaking with human voices underwater was ridiculous, because it is. And he said that he thought that if they were going to communicate while in water without the air bubbles, they would speak more like dolphins or whales, which just makes sense. I mean, I thought of that myself before Schneider said it. That's what I would have wanted to see. He thinks this stuff through. You can tell that's part of his thought process to say, well, how would this work? How do we explain this? Like, at least make it plausible. It doesn't have to be scientifically airtight, but at least allow me to suspend disbelief. And that's what that Green Lantern movie did. It just blew away my ability to suspend disbelief because of the level of ridiculousness. So whatever they do, if they reuse Ryan Reynolds, they need to rein in that ridiculousness.
Absolutely.
And I know people are going to say, well, he's imagining things with his ring. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I get that's ridiculous. But just rein it in a little and allow me to suspend a little bit of my disbelief. That's all I'm asking. Anyway, I got off on a sidetrack.
No, it's a great discussion. That's part of, the amazing thing is, I mean, growing up, reading comics, these are the discussions we had. We always get into the minutiae and the nitty gritty of it all. And that's I think what people, especially when you've grown up with this stuff. Yes, comic books can be very, sort of like ridiculous and super fantastical in the most, crazy way possible. But one thing about bringing things to the cinematic arena is that now you have to make them believable. And you have to take all these sort of zany concepts and you have to ground them in a level of reality that just makes for really, really good, timeless storytelling. That's a task that filmmakers have, and that's where Zack Snyder excels to the nth degrees. I can take things that the concept of Green Lanterns is really absolutely zany and some sci-fi weird ridiculous stuff. But smart people are able to take that concept and make it into something, quite grounded, quite believable, that has, the highest of stakes. And Jeff Johns actually did that a lot in comics. Now, I'm not in the crowd that believes he's the best writer ever. He writes for comic books, and comic book, the standard, not really that high. If you actually read books, actual good books, you know this. But he did a really good job with introducing some concepts, adding some edge to it, some believability, expanding the mythos. And those are things that anyone who makes any Green Lantern lore going forward has to tap into. Like, Jeff Johns' ideas for Green Lanterns are just like mind-blowingly good. He did some of the darkest DC stuff. It's funny that he'll come along and try to make Justice League this Super Friends Saturday morning cartoons special when he's done some of the darkest, most sort of haunting, edgy adult stuff from that material, which just shows that he was just in it for the ambition, just to.
Well, I feel like he probably lacked confidence. He was a junior executive. He probably has a belief in what he enjoys and knew what worked in the comics, but he's also looking up to his buddy Feige and sees what's working for Feige and sees what hasn't worked for DC, at least in their perception, and probably had doubt about what would work theatrically, and I probably was influenced by that.
He had no conviction.
I think I don't think it was. I think it was just a lack of conviction and a lack of self-confidence to push, maybe what he likes, because he does write an entertaining comic book and he does come up with some dark concepts, and it is hard to reconcile what he did to Snyder's Justice League versus what he writes. I mean, he's not on the level of an Alan Moore. But he writes an entertaining comic book, at least from the ones I've read. So certainly not the lighthearted, warm hugs and cookies fluff that they try to turn Justice League into. So, he's not all bad. But going back to Green Lantern, if he's in the middle of a fight and he's imagining something anything more complex than a can opener, I'm not buying it. Like, you could make some cool shit with shields and bubbles and sharp stabbing objects or blunt objects, right? But you shouldn't be thinking of a tank or with machine guns.
That's one of the criticisms that a lot of people have of Hal Jordan as Green Lantern. But also, there's this sort of thing where the writers try to connect what the character knows in their life to what they imagine. So Hal Jordan, he imagines a lot of like a baseball bat and ridiculous stuff like that.
And an F-15. He just sticks up an F-15 in every part and bolt that goes into it along with the weaponry.
Because he's a pilot. Because he's a pilot.
Because all the pilots could build an F-15 from scratch.
It doesn't have to work because it's his willpower that does it. It has nothing to do. Yeah. I could create
his willpower
a locomotive.
Knows the parts for an F-15.
Yeah, because
he's the
dude,
pilot.
It's psychotic. It doesn't matter. Not only, first of all, he's the pilot. Second of all, it doesn't have to fly. It's his willpower. It's not actually physically flying. It's a personification of his willpower being put into the energy of the ring. That's why it doesn't matter whether or not the oil is actually pumping through the engine or the compressor is where. It doesn't matter. It's his willpower. That's the power of the actual thing. It's just that we're seeing it personified as a plane or a locomotive.
See, why doesn't he just fly? Make himself like a toboggan and fly. What does he need to do?
He can. But he
probably could.
He does stuff like this all the time. Like it's an interesting concept. The thing is, I just feel like whoever deals with it has to have a really, really, really wild, creative, awesome imagination. And people who made that movie, they just didn't. But to wrap this whole discussion up, it's just a rumor at this point. I really enjoyed our prognosis, theorizing, all that stuff. It's a fun discussion. If it gets official and official word comes down, we'll dive deeper into it. I'm sure we'll hear some more concrete stuff about it. It will be cool if we hear some stuff about it in the near future, quote unquote. All right. So our third and final news topic for the day has to do with cinema openings and specifically Tenet. So Tenet's release date has been moved to the 31st of June, like firmed up. And the reason why it's moved to that date is that it is believed that theaters would have fully opened by then, worldwide. we have some very specific details for the UK. So for the UK, theaters would start opening up by the 4th of July. The Prime Minister outlined, plans, social distancing, mask wearing, all that stuff. And it's tied into the fact that in the UK, the Office for National Statistics shows that both the scale of the outbreak, that the scale of the outbreak in Britain is in its retreat. It's on the decline. However, the US, different case entirely. The coronavirus cases are actually on the rise in the US, which is unfortunate. But in the US, AMC chain is looking to open by the 15th of July. Regal is set to open between the 10th and 15th. Those are the two biggest theater chains, and I'm sure the other smaller ones will follow suit. So, guys, what do you think about cinemas opening? Are you ready for it? Do you have faith? And Tenet's moved to the 31st of July. Are you guys going to rush out to see Tenet? Let's start with Christian. What do you think of this topic?
Nope, I'm not. Not going to rush out to see it. Look, I live in what was the epicenter at one point, right outside the New York City area in the United States. And we've done a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice to drive from mitigation to suppression of this virus. And now 25 or whatever it is of my fellow states here decided to blow the doors open and just let the virus run rampant and push the fuck it button and stop caring. I'll stop my rant there on coronavirus and our stupid response in this country. But until we get a handle on this, absolutely not. I'm not going to a theater. Now, I've read some of the science that most likely that's one of the lower risk things you could do in an indoor setting with 50% capacity, people wearing masks. We're all looking in the same direction and we're not yelling at one another like a crowded bar. Okay, I get that. And I want to be clear. The theater experience with my wife and also with my family is a really cool thing. It's a family experience and I miss it. I really do miss it. I like going to the theater. I like going to movies. You can go play with my Fandango account and see all the stupid tickets I've bought. I really enjoy going to the movies. And I know that there's a push for a lot of people to go back to the way it was and they need to get out of quarantine. But in this country, I cannot speak for the UK or nor for Canada. We are not ready. And I don't care who says it, that we are. And it's going to be very difficult to enforce the regulations that they might put in place. Everybody's got to wear a mask, whatever. I know the theaters will do the best they can. They will probably try to block things off and use advanced ticket sales as much as possible. I get that. And I know people need their jobs. I am very sensitive to that. I know people need their jobs. I am not going back, not for a while. I'm not going to bars. I'm not going to stuff. I'm just not. I have a heart condition. I'm in a vulnerable part of the population. I can't. My wife, had cancer surgery. No. We can't do this. So I don't know what else to say, man. It's really sad because the theater going experience is a part of me and my life and my family. And I love movies and I miss it. I really do miss it, but I'm not ready to go back. And I don't know how people can feel that they're ready to go back and feel safe right now when half of my country the cases are just going up.
Well, Paul, what do you think? Are you as fired up and charged up?
I'm never as fired up as you guys, except
sorry.
Except when we talk about the ridiculousness of Green Lantern. So, I have a box full of Green Lantern comics from my early teenage years. So don't think I'm a Green Lantern hater. He was actually my dad's favorite comic character. So I inherited my dad's Green Lanterns and I collected Wild myself. It's just been a long time. But no, I'm not as fired up about movie theaters or anything really. But I won't be rushing out. No, I mean, I'm not going to take a risk. We have a relatively low number of cases here, extremely low, really. And I'll reserve the right to change my decision if I feel more confident about it, but it just doesn't seem worth the risk right now, right? And I'm okay. As much as I like Nolan's movies and as much as I'm looking forward to Tenet, I feel like I could wait for that one. And I know even though you guys disagree with me on this, I still feel like there'll be enough people in my situation that aren't rushing out to the theater that it will end up on premium video demand much sooner than a lot of people expect. And I'm willing to wait for that. So I'll test that out probably unless things change substantially between now and when it comes out.
Yeah, I was sorry I was so fired up. I apologize.
No, Christian, you're always fired up. It's great.
Sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
No,
I
no,
got myself all angry at the COVID response. Sorry, Lupe. Go ahead.
No, no,
no.
no,
The
you're perfectly
passion
fine.
is good, Christian. It's good. We
Yeah,
need it.
yeah, it is. Bring it, bring it. I'm in a different situation. I live in the UK, so the government has handled. I mean, it hasn't been perfect, but in comparison to the US, my beloved home country, they've done an outstanding job. Like whenever I hear people complain about the way the UK handled it, I'm like, you guys do not know, you guys do not know how terrible this could have been. Um, the cases here are on the decline. Everyone is very responsible about social distancing, about wearing masks, you know, um, about keeping everyone safe. You know, that's the thing about coronavirus. It's not just about you as a person. It's about taking care of other people, taking care of your fellow citizens, the fellow people in your community. You're protecting them by taking extra steps, which are not even that hard. So I am quite confident in going to theaters or whatever, but I am still going to take precautions. As soon as theaters open up, I'm not going. I'm not going to go. Movies that I otherwise would have just gone to see on a whim, I am not going to see. But Tenet, I am not going to miss because that's one of my. It's like my second most anticipated movie of the year. I'm super excited to see it. But I am going to take precautions. So the precautions I'm specifically going to take are thus. I'm going to go at the earliest showing of the day. Usually those showings the theater is usually empty. Usually. Also, I'm assuming that the theater would have been cleaned and sanitized by that point. And also, when I go, I'm going to wear a mask. And yeah, and so those are some of the precautions I feel I can take. But the cases for coronavirus in the UK are on the decline rather than in the US where they're on the rise. And in the
Stop
US,
reminding me.
people are completely not just ignoring. It's like they're intentionally flouting the ideas. They're being intentionally heinous and wicked and mean and rebellious for no reason.
Whoa,
Uh,
not
uh,
all of us.
yeah, I mean, not all, but all it takes is just a few idiots.
No, I know. I know.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm aware.
obviously, I'm not talking about you and sensible people, but there are enough COVIDiots to ruin the whole thing for everyone.
Great hashtag, by the way.
So, so, I know we shouldn't laugh about it, but we laugh
No, I
to
know.
hide the tears. That's what we do. So
I'm
I'm
trying to
really
get down
looking
to
forward
Florida,
to it.
Lupe. So the theater seems like nothing in comparison to that. But I think my Florida trip's going to be on hold for a while.
Dude,
Yeah,
Florida is
it
probably
has to
like
be.
one of the places with the craziest people. So
4,000 cases and new cases a day, last I heard. So yeah, it's not
absolutely
not a good
insane.
time to be going down there.
Absolutely
They are
insane.
where New Jersey and New York was back in the epicenter when our peak was hitting into late March going into April. That's where we were. That's scary. I don't know what else to say. And I keep hearing the virus is attenuating, it's weakening. There's no freaking evidence of that. None.
No,
Zero.
No,
Stop.
no.
We need to
I
stop.
need my Disney
Ah.
fix, but I got to survive till the Snyder cut. So it's a tough dilemma, you know.
Stay alive for the
Yeah,
NC.
bro, you got to stay
Okay,
alive for the Snyder cut, dude.
yeah. So that's
Got
that's
to
a
keep
good
keep
that's a good
breathing another
segue.
year.
Just another year. That's a good segue into our coming soon section. And our coming soon section is where we give you our instant reaction to the hottest, most noteworthy trailers of the week. And the first one we're going to be discussing is the Snyder Cut teaser trailer. This trailer for the mythical, soon to be legendary cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League was dropped last week, and it was about a 30-second teaser trailer, but it shook all of us to our cores. Coming in 2020, exclusively on HBO Max, the Snyder Cut. So let's start with Christian, who's the least fanboyish of us about the Snyder Cut. Why don't you give us your reaction to the 30 something second teaser trailer for the Snyder Cut?
I'm in a chat with some comic fans, and two of the guys in there are big supporters of the Snyder Cut, and they like wet their pants when this thing came out. They were going nuts, and they were like, "Gotta watch it, gotta watch it." Okay, cool. So I watched it, and I was like, "Meh." It was nothing that I felt. It was a little underwhelming. That was basically it. Now the coolest part was the Dark Side reveal. That's the coolest part. And he's standing there and he looks fucking awesome. And he's got the huge CGI shit going on in the background, and the armies of Apocalypse are coming. And yeah, okay, that part looks really cool. But I think we kind of have to, well, for me, it's my opinion, have to call it what it is. It was a little bit of a teaser trailer. I wonder if it was released a little sooner than it was supposed to be released. This didn't really do anything for me that was like, whoa, this is awesome. I gotta go down. The Dark Side stuff was really cool. The Wonder Woman, that the Diana stuff, okay, so that's nice. That kind of looked like, reminded me of Apocalypse from X-Men. With you going back in time and you get the hieroglyphs and all that. Interesting stuff. But if this was supposed to like get you really pumped, and this was the only thing you saw of the Snyder Cut, like for me, I'd be like, well, like we know what's coming, so we know it's something completely different. The Dark Side thing, though, give me that. Give me that was cool. So that part was, and that's probably not even done. So that's that little bit that we saw is like the coolest part, and that isn't even complete. And that looked pretty cool. But it is in line with, I guess, a lot of the reveals that we've seen, a lot of the stuff that people have sent me from the movement that Zach has posted out there. So my excitement level has not grown, nor has it lessened. It's exactly where it was before. Because to me, this was just, I hate to say it, guys, I'm sorry, it was a bit underwhelming for me. So, yeah.
No, that's your that's versed. So, Paul, what was your reaction to the teaser?
All right, well, this might surprise you guys, and I will qualify this with my pros and cons, but I was pretty underwhelmed as well. I have heard a lot of hyperbole about this, and it doesn't necessarily feel genuine to me. I mean, so let me break it down in terms of pros and cons. So we've seen everything in this trailer before, right? The only thing that's new is that we're seeing video of Diana staring at these murals. We've seen the murals. I mean, we've seen the whole 360-degree room in color. We've seen the Dark Side picture before. So none of this was new. But what I really did like was the color was beautiful on those murals. And you see the look on her face, and you get a sense of the tone, and you're like, okay, this fits what I wanted to see. And it gives you a taste of the mystery and the awe of the history behind Darkseid, and opens your mind to how exciting that history could be when you bring Darkseid into it. But we've already gone through that thought process back when we saw those pictures. Was it 1-2 years ago? I mean, these leaked out between 2018 and 2019, right? So
yeah, had to be that.
So for someone who's never seen this stuff before, I mean, maybe that's more exciting. But I guess what excited me about it was that I felt like the tone was back, the right coloring was back, and it further solidifies the fact that this is real and it's actually happening. So that's what's exciting to me. On the downside, the scene with Darkseid himself still didn't look finished to me. It was low res, probably intentionally. Someone had made a fan GIF of the still that Schneider had shared previously, and this didn't look much different than that to me, to be quite honest. So it didn't feel finished yet. And the overlay of the Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor speech from BVS, I like that. I think that's appealing to Schneider fans. It felt a little like fan-made trailerish to me, to be quite honest. Like it's something I would have expected someone in our community to overlay over a little piece of footage. I mean, it was cool, but a lot of people hate Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. So this felt very niche. I love him. I think he's great. But this felt very targeted to a niche audience, and it felt very small, and it felt like it came out early. Like, to be quite honest, when I watched this, I felt, and Grace Randolph had said that Jason Momoa leaked this early, accidentally, and then the rest of them had to scramble to basically legitimize it. And so you saw Schneider and HBO Max and all those people then tweet it out. And I don't know if that's true or not, but to me, this felt like the kind of thing that Schneider might have shared with his fans at JusticeCon that's coming up before we get the full trailer at DC Fandom. So it was fine. As a fan of Schneider, it doesn't and a fan of this movie, it doesn't diminish my excitement at all. It just didn't really excite me by showing me anything new. It just, as I say, it further solidified that we're getting it. It reminded me that it's going to look good, better than what we got, at least the Diana scene did. And it also told me there's still a ways to go, and that they obviously don't have a whole lot they want to share just yet. But that Schneider himself, I believe in his tweet, said more to come at DC Fandom. So I got to believe we're going to get the trailer that's going to give you stuff you haven't seen and get you really excited like he always does at DC Fandom. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think that's where we're going to get what's new and exciting and what we're really looking for, and something that's going to wow the general audience. I hope. I think that's where we're next going to see something. I don't know, Lupe. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, sorry to disappoint you guys, but I was super excited about it. Super. I've watched it so many times. The thing is, Zach has already shown us, a lot of pictures of the Snyder Cut. And if you just extrapolate that into full scenes, you're gonna feel like you've seen almost the entire movie. Like, honestly, like, we've seen stuff with Atlanteans, we've seen stuff with Cyborg. Imagine he's on Apocalypse. We've seen, like, there's so much stuff it's shown us in pictures. Ryan Choi stuff, Starlab stuff, Martha, and like Manhunter. That doesn't mean that when I see it in live action, I'm not going to be excited. I'm going to be as excited as if I had never seen it before, because you're getting the emotional impact of it. You're getting the music. You're getting the actors' expressions. I mean, it's the full treatment. It's why movies and films are such a powerful medium, why they're more impactful than just music, why they're more impactful than just words on a page, why they're more impactful than just pictures like in comic books. So the fact that I'd seen these images before did not take my excitement away at all. I was able to see Gal Gadot's full expression, her show of terror and fear. And by the way, she did a brilliant job acting in those brief seconds. Like, the job she did, absolutely incredible. Like, remember, like in Batman v Superman, when she saw Doomsday, she said, "I've killed things from other planets before." In her own movie, she was always going towards Ares, always, like, unafraid. This is the first time we saw Diana actually terrified of an enemy threat. So these are the type of things that you don't get in just pictures, and why I was, like, super excited. I love the facts with the Jesse Eisenberg voiceover. What that does is that it ties everything together. It's super cohesive. Like, we're no longer left with this sort of hanging thread like, BVS is actually getting an actual true sequel, and all these pieces are forming, and they're all fitting together. And in terms of what Paul said of it being for a niche audience, yes, exactly that. Like, this is, something that, has been in conversation with I'll just leave it as with someone, in terms of not pandering to, not now that Zack Snyder has the Snyder Cut release. This is not the time for him to now pander to the general audience. It's time for him to double down. Actually,
well, I'm not suggesting you should have pandered, but if that's the only thing you're going to show, I was a little surprised at that choice. And sorry to cut you off, Louis. I just want to say one thing I forgot.
Yeah.
I was excited about hearing the real score, and I don't think we're going to hear Eisenberg's dialogue while she's looking at those murals.
No.
Right. So I was excited to hear the real score and get a sense of the ominousness from the score. And we didn't get that. We got dialogue we'd heard before, and dialogue that's specifically not popular with a segment of the audience. And I get that that's fine, because it works for me.
Which is fine, because I love dialogue.
Yeah, I love it too. I think it's great dialogue. For me, this felt like this is something for my segment of hardcore fans, not this is something to bring in the widest possible audience. That's why it just felt like an odd choice. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying it was an odd choice as a first look teaser to me. If you're I mean, HBO Max cares about bringing in the largest possible audience, right? If this was part of something larger, fine, great. But that was really it. That was the piece, and it just felt like an odd choice. But
Yeah.
anyway, as I say, I just would have liked to have seen the score. And the other thing I forgot to mention, I'm not a fan of that 4:3 aspect ratio, and that's not even the aspect ratio of his film. So I just thought that was an odd choice as well. I mean, even though 1.66 is an odd aspect ratio, this wasn't 1.66. This
Mhm.
was a weird, like, TV size, low
Yeah.
res trailer. It just the whole thing seemed kind of weird to me. And
Mhm.
not say
It's
it didn't take
obvious
my
that
enthusiasm away. It's just weird.
yeah, it's obvious that this was optimized for mobile devices, and yeah, it's the thing is we have to remember that it's just a teaser. Like this is not like this is 30 seconds long. Like it's not even, but it does it for me, it did what a teaser is supposed to do, which is like it's not even a trailer. Like it's not like it's like, oh, we got the first trailer or whatever. But at the same time, it is valid. Like all your criticisms are valid. But for me personally, I absolutely loved it. I love watching it. Seeing dark side and seeing that in motion and seeing the camera the way it pans and I was drawing parallels between that and some apocalyptic classical paintings. I'll post some of that on my Twitter if you guys want to check back later. You just get the feel that yes, this is, I mean, with the tone of it, like that's part of what people who wanted the Snyder Cut have been adamant about. This is not the tone we wanted. Guess what this teaser tells you? It tells you that you're getting like the tone you're getting is pretty freaking
Yeah,
serious, pretty epic, dire, dangerous. The stakes are high. Like that's one thing
the
that one
seriousness is
parallel.
back.
Yeah, that's one
Yeah,
parallel I do remember. The first trailer that we got for Justice League, like this is when, post BVS, when critics were meddling and there was so much hate and the studio was pressuring him. The first trailer we got at San Diego Comic Con was actually quite a light-hearted one. Now, it wasn't to the level of MCU lightheartedness, but it's the one that had the Flash with like, oh, stop talking, I'm in, and all that stuff. It was a little bit more lighthearted with jokes because that was the pressure that he was facing. But now this is the first teaser for the Snyder Cut, and it's almost like a horror movie. It's almost like a horror movie, and so it's setting the tone for the mind state in which Zack Snyder is going into making this film, and that in itself is absolutely it's enticing, it's exciting, and I can't wait for the first actual trailer that we're gonna get on the 22nd of August at DC Fandom, the DC Fandom event that's coming up.
and do you believe that we're getting the trailer? I mean, because that hasn't been fully. He said more to come, right? So I believe we're getting a trailer, but I don't think it's been explicitly promised. But you have to believe it's coming, right?
Yeah, it is good. It's gonna be a trailer. It's like there's no way it's not a trailer. Like there's no way it's not a trailer. Yeah, there's no way it's not a trailer. You could say maybe he was hedging his bets in case things fall through. He's not able to show a trailer and he shows some other stuff, but I'm sure we'll get something substantial. And I'm expecting it to be a trailer because what more can you give than the teaser that you already gave? So I'm
And don't
excited.
get me wrong, better than nothing. I always want more. And I didn't dislike it. It's just I was, as Christian said, just slightly underwhelmed. But hey, I'm still just as
Yeah,
excited and can't wait.
yeah. No, like it's valid. Like you don't have to be excited about everything, and like as a matter of fact, I appreciate the criticism. It shows that you're just not a blind fanboy, and I tend not to listen to people who are blind fanboys of anything. If you're a blind follower of something, I'm not listening to anything you have to say about it. That's the way that I operate in terms of just logic, because I'd rather listen to someone who has a balanced opinion, or So yeah, so I appreciate the honesty. The other thing I'll tell people is that we're quite. I mean, we don't know exactly how long, but we're about a year from the Snyder cut. So, this is just the first thing. Things are gonna be trickling. We're gonna be getting more news. So it's good that, he's not showing everything. Don't forget that Zack Snyder has been showing us stuff for years. He's been showing us teasing us with pictures and reveals on Vero, talking about plot points and characters that are going to be in there. So we don't want to get to the Snyder cut actually releasing, and we know every single thing that's in
No,
the
we,
movie.
we
So
already know too much. But
exactly.
we know too many story points, but we haven't seen 75% of his footage. I mean, now we know probably a lot of the story points that are in that 75% from his stills, and just from little things he shared in the comments, but we haven't seen it. And as I say, I just want to see some new stuff with the actual score and maybe some new finished VFX. That would be my wish list, I think, for an extended trailer at DC Fandom. So I'm hoping we get to see some of those things.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I don't want to get greedy, and I don't want to
looking
get too
forward to
spoiled either, right? So it's a fine balance.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so on to the next trailer. So Apple had a tech convention, displaying some of their new technologies, hardware, software, all that stuff. They also gave us some content for their Apple TV Plus streaming services. And it's a trailer for a new sci-fi series called Foundation. Now, this is based on a trilogy of short stories by Isaac Asimov. He's probably the greatest sci-fi writer ever in history of ever on the planet. Ever. Almost everything we know about sci-fi today comes from him. His list of iconic stuff is just it's absolutely mind blowing. All your stuff like Blade Runner, like iRobot, all that stuff. All so this series, the showrunner is David Goyer, who wrote The Dark Knight and Man of Steel. Those two films are favorites of the Film Exiles podcast. So I mean that in itself, even without seeing anything, I was already hooked. Isaac Asimov, sci-fi, David Goyer, showrunner and writer, and then Apple TV. If you guys don't know, I've watched a lot of their stuff. In the future, I think I'm going to do a Apple TV review roundup. Their stuff is always top quality. They have a particular look that permeates through every single one of their shows, but the cinematography is good, the acting is good, production value is super high. So, I mean, all those factors had me excited. So, I'd like to know your reactions to this. Let's start with Paul, because Paul's always feeding for some good sci-fi.
Yeah, no, this is right up my alley. I can't wait to talk about this one. So, much like Dune, this is something that I remember my father and my mother, who were both very much into science fiction when I was a kid. My father probably more so. These were his thing. He loved Isaac Asimov. They also liked the Dune series, but these are things that I remember as a kid being, only kind of getting. And I took a stab at reading Isaac Asimov at one point as a kid, and I wasn't ready for it at that point. It wasn't for me, but boy, did this look good. I mean, this is right up my alley. The production value looks high. Like you say, the cinematography is beautiful. And when you take Isaac Asimov, you're going to get intelligent science fiction, and then you mix it with David Goyer, who I personally love as a screenwriter. It seems like it's hard to go wrong. And I was actually so excited about this. I went out immediately, burned up my last free Audible credit on the Foundation audiobook to get started. So as soon as I'm done my slogging through my Dune audiobook, I'm going to switch over to Foundation and give that one a listen. So I think this looks great, and this is right after Snyder Cut and Dune and Tenet, and this would slot in there as my probably one of my most anticipated things now over the next 2 years. I can't wait. I think this looks great. What do you guys think, Christian? Do you have similar thoughts on this one, or where does this land for you?
I'm like you. I mean, I love sci-fi, and Isaac Asimov is a bit of a rough read. Even at 40 years old, he's a bit of a rough read. But a lot of his stories are out of control good. I mean, they're so freaking good. And if you're a sci-fi guy, you almost have to get yourself familiar with Isaac Asimov's stories. Now, I've read a couple, I should say more than a couple of his novels. I have not read this series. I did not read the Foundation series, but there's so much about it that's so cool. That's so like, I don't know if the word forward thinking, I don't know if that term is the right way to do it, but basically like a guy predicts that the current empire will fall and there will be a dark age for about 30,000 years. And in order to ensure a more favorable outcome so that we can get the human suffering in that 30,000 years truncated to a much smaller timetable and get to the next galactic empire, he has to create something called the Foundation, which is this group of people that are positioned on extreme ends of the galaxy, and they can expand humanity's like collective knowledge. It's nuts, dude. It's really nuts. This is sci-fi. It's awesome. It looks really good. Everything about this looks cool, for lack of a better word. It just it struck me immediately when I watched the trailer. It's like, this thing is just like premier sci-fi. Now, to Lupe's point, Apple TV may have that stuff. This is actually not going to get me to get Apple TV. I subscribe to too many services as it is. I can't do it. I just cannot justify going to another service. But from what I've read about Apple TV, and Lupe, you can correct me if I'm wrong as soon as I stop, and I'll shut my mouth here in a second. I think they've lacked like that prestige show, that Mandalorian show, you know, whatever it may be that you're looking for, that they haven't really gotten that. And I've heard whispers that this show could be it. And from what we saw from the trailer, it absolutely could be. It's got the right cast. Gemma, what's his name? Gemma Arterton. Oh my God, I love her. She's fucking outstanding. Anyway, I love her. But it's got the right cast. The music was moody, intense. The visuals looked bright yet dark at the same time, so it had that perfect contrast. Man, this is just cool prestige sci-fi, and I wish it the best. I hope there's a way for me to see it off of Apple TV. I'm not advocating piracy. I'm advocating buying the episodes. So I'm hoping I get a chance to do that. But man, this thing looks really cool. Not going to force me to get Apple TV just yet, but woo, looked really cool. So.
Can I jump in for 1 second there, Christian? This would incentivize me to purchase Apple TV. Now, my wife just got a new
right thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like my wife got a new iPad last week, and we got a year's free subscription. But if this is outside the year subscription, I will undoubtedly pay to extend my subscription to watch this. And I think Apple TV is only like $5.99 a month, right? So you get 3 months for the price of a premium movie ticket. It's not unaffordable. I mean, and I would definitely. I mean, this would be a top 5, top 10 movie for me. And it looks every bit cinematic quality. We'll see what the actual finished product looks like, but this is a no-brainer purchase for me. I want to give them my money. I want to give them double the money for this. This is the kind of content I want to pay for. I think this looks fantastic.
Yeah, really, it just looks good. I remember, I think it might have been Goyer who said it. He said, like, you know how like Star Trek is the thinking man's version of, you know, Star Wars, right? Well, they were like, this stuff makes Star Trek look like Star Wars. Like that's what Foundation is like. That's how intelligent and how forward thinking it is. And it will make you think that much more about the human condition and what we need to do to better ourselves and everything. That's sci-fi, man. That's sci-fi. So yeah, this is good shit. It's good shit.
I concur. I'm not gonna be the lone wolf standing against the pack on this one. This looks excellent. In terms of what you said for Apple TV not having that marquee series, I think it has to do with the draw, sort of drawing people in, name brand series. Like they don't have that. If The Mandalorian was not attached to Star Wars, do you guys think it would have had the audience that it did and the notoriety it did? I don't think so.
Probably not. I mean, it's a good show, but if you're a Star Wars fan, you're much more invested into it than if you're not a Star Wars fan.
Heard the brand name of Star Wars,
right?
You're likely to give it a shot.
You'll give it a shot.
It's an incentive, but I would have subscribed regardless.
No. I'm just talking
for a chunk of the audience. Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the fact that Apple TV actually has really good series. Like everything I've watched on there has been good. Like if you like Paul, you like sci-fi, you should see the show called C. Such a horrible name. You should see C.
It's on my list. I stuck it on my list. Well, Jason Momoa, right? Yeah, it's on my list. We're actually watching Servant, right? Go ahead. Tell me about C.
Servant. No, C is actually really, really, really good. It's a sci-fi series set in a dystopian future. There's a lot of great world building. It's quite brutal and savage, and it's an unforgiving world. It mixes sci-fi with sort of like religious culticism, and so it's well done. The cinematography is drop dead gorgeous. Like the cinematography you're seeing in Foundation is like the same level of cinematography. Obviously, they're not in space, and you don't have, sort of celestial bodies and, spaceships and, huge, towering structures or what have you. But C is very good. Also, the morning show is brilliant. Absolutely loved that. Servants, as you said, is good. Those are a few of the shows I can remember having seen. They also have a show that's in the vein of The Office and Silicon Valley. It's about some video game developers.
Mythical
I didn't
Quest, is
really,
that or something?
yes, exactly. Mythic
Yeah.
Quest. I didn't really like it. But yes, so in terms of what Christian said about, them not having a Mandalorian level show, they have shows that are on the same level of quality.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the notoriety. They just don't have the name recognition, the brand cachet. So
Yeah, and I probably should have I probably should have clarified that. That's kind of what I meant. Not that the show sucked, and I apologize if it came across that way. That's not what I meant.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
I
It's
meant
no.
No.
No,
Well,
it's not.
and
It's not.
guys,
It's not your.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say. I mean, this actually brings us. It's a perfect segue to our next trailer, right? If we're talking about shows that are going to grab people's attention and bring them in as subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying they don't have one now, I think we got one coming up, right? At least that's my impression. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Charlotte?
So I mean, that's a perfect segue in terms of talking about what they have. Hopefully, Foundation is that for them, but at the same time, I'm not super optimistic, because if you think of things like Black Sails, like you guys hear how I talk about Black Sails all the time. Sometimes things just don't, and the way things catch fire, buzz about things, it's a fickle beast. Like, you never know how it goes. So hopefully Foundation is able to do that for them. One thing that I'm confident and I like is that Apple has such deep pockets, and they're basically giving the service free to people who purchase their products, that I don't think they're going to cancel a lot of these shows before their time is up. That's always the threat, the looming threat, with a lot of good series that don't get the attention they deserve. So I'm looking forward to Foundation. Visually, it reminds me a lot of, I see a lot of Interstellar in it, like a mix of Interstellar and Oblivion. They're two beautiful sci-fi, space kind of
I
movies.
saw Dune in Oblivion, and
Yeah,
the
you
little clips we've
did
seen from
Dune.
Dune, and
Mm-hmm.
even a little bit of Solo, which and I like some of the cinematography in Solo. So
Yeah, Solo was good.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I
good.
saw a little bit of that too in it, but a much more serious tone than Solo. Not that, again, I like Solo. I don't want to put it down. I'm in that group that thinks Solo is pretty okay. So, but yeah, no, I think it looks great.
Yeah. So that segues us into our next trailer, which is from another Apple TV offering. Now, this one was bought from cinemas over to Apple TV, and it's Greyhound, starring Tom Hanks, directed by Aaron Schneider. And Greyhound is based on the true story of a first-time U.S. Navy commander whose boat is under attack from enemy submarines. It will be released on Apple TV Plus on the 10th of July, and it has a sort of what's that board game that they made into a movie?
Battleship.
That exactly. It has a feel. It has a feel of like Battleship, but done right.
I was
So
gonna say I didn't get the Battleship vibe off this one, but
yeah, no,
go.
not it just yeah, just by loose association.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, Paul, what do you think of Greyhound?
Oh, I love this. I mean, I've seen this wasn't the first trailer, but this was one that I'd actually missed until I stumbled on it tonight, looking at Foundation. And this was a step up from what we'd seen previously. Not that what we'd seen previously was bad, but this blew me away. And I was just so excited. I brought my wife in to watch the trailer with me, and she normally doesn't like anything I like. And she said, "Wow, we're going to have to watch this one downstairs on the big screen." So she's fully on board with it. It was, I mean, it's got Tom Hanks too, so it brings people. Um, it's going to bring in the general audience. He brings an audience that wouldn't otherwise be attracted to this. Now, my wife likes history. This isn't too far from her. Her wheelhouse for types of movies she likes to watch. But this just looked great. I mean, it's cinematic quality. The VFX was phenomenal. What we saw in this trailer. I mean, it looks like something that actually kind of cries out to be seen on the big screen. Now, I don't know if the whole movie's going to have that look. But I was blown away. It really shocked me how good it looked and how excited I am for this movie. And I think it looked good enough that I would consider subscribing for this based on this movie. I mean, if you're paying $5.99 a month to be, if you're one person watching it alone, that's well worth it to watch a movie, right? Never mind if you've got more than one person in your household. I mean, it's less than the price of a rental. So I would. This seems like a no-brainer. So if you want something that looks great, that's got a big actor like Tom Hanks, that might bring in subscribers just to at least give your product a chance. This to me seems like it should do the job. Now, like you said, it's a fickle thing. Who knows what's going to draw people out, right? And if it doesn't have jokes or doesn't have bright colors, is it going to grab people? I don't know. Hopefully it gets good word of mouth. Hopefully it's as good as it looks. But I'm excited about this one. This is something that my excitement level for this went up substantially based on this trailer. And if anyone's listening and hasn't watched it, I would recommend going and watching the new trailer because I think it looks great. What did you guys think? Am I crazy, or does this look good to you guys too?
No, you're not
Christian, go
crazy.
ahead.
Definitely not crazy. No, I was blown away by this trailer immediately when I watched it. It's my favorite trailer of the ones we're going to talk about tonight. I'll just throw it out there already. It looked the best. It felt the best. It's one of my favorite periods of history is World War II, and we concentrate so much on the war in the Pacific when it comes to the war in the oceans. Most of the time, like the Battle of Midway and everything like that, a lot of the famous battles were in the Pacific. And people forget that the battle in the Atlantic, I guess it started in 1942, maybe a few months after the U.S. officially entered World War II, was pretty nuts with Nazi submarines all over the place. And you had this multinational effort to protect these merchant convoys. And they were under constant attack by the German submarines. Very interesting period of history. It felt like very much alive in this movie. The scenes in the ocean didn't feel like CGI ocean. There's the scenes where the ships were being attacked by the submarines didn't feel that way. It felt very real, very scary, very frightening, thinking about being a crew out there by yourself in the middle of the ocean while your captain is fighting his own personal self-doubts and demons. And there's a lot at play here in this movie. I agree with Paul. I'm worried, obviously that a movie like this might not get what it deserves simply because, we're so into family stuff lately. Whereas, like back in the day, a movie like The Thin Red Line or Saving Private Ryan would have definitely gotten, Oscar talk and all this other stuff. And it would have gotten so much more play in the theaters. And it's not even going to make it to theaters now. But I hope it gets more. It looks like it's going to be so good. So hands down, my favorite trailer of the night at such a great, I hate to use the word great. I'm sorry, guys. Great's not the right word because World War II is not a great time in history, but such a fascinating time in history, and about the battle in the Atlantic Ocean that I think we talk so much about the Holocaust and the battle in the South Pacific and the islands there and the Normandy invasion and all that. And I think sometimes the war in the Atlantic Ocean is forgotten about, and those guys fought and died. And it was such an amazing, I guess from an historian's point of view, an amazing time in history. So this could turn out to be such a really interesting movie.
I mean, I agree with you guys. I can't add anything more. I think it looked like it has such great balance between the human, emotional, cathartic elements. He's like a first-time commander. It seems like he's leaving behind a woman who he's in love with. So you have that element to it. Then you also have the naval officers and soldiers on the ship who he's in command of, and they're in this fight of their lives, and obviously they're all dependent on the decisions he's gonna make, and they realize that he's a first time commander in this situation. Then you have the action, the cinematography, the VFX of the battleship versus submarine stuff, and it looks like that's been realized visually so well. The sound design looks like it's going to be rocking. It looks like it's hitting all the right notes in every single arena, and I can't wait to see the collision of those factors, just explode into a blissful shrapnel that's gonna like attack my eyeballs and ears. It's gonna be I'm gonna be in heaven. Like this is one that I actually like. I should have known better because Tom Cruise is such a great actor, and he doesn't. I mean, when you're at that level, when you're in such high demand, you can only be picky with the roles that you take on, picky with the people you work with, and add to that the fact that he's one of our greatest actors. So he's no slouch when it comes to relaying the emotion of the part. So yeah, this is the only thing that I'm thinking is this something that could have contended for awards? I don't know. I don't know. War movies are really good at tugging on the heartstrings because war is a very extreme situation in which everything about our humanity, the good and the bad, are pushed to the extreme. So there's so much dramatic, dramatic content in that. So usually these movies end up being, really good acting showcases, really good visual effects or action or editing or whatever showcase. So we'll see about that. But yes, I am really looking forward to this. I didn't even watch the trailer the whole way through. I watched about 60% of it, and I was like, I'm sold. I don't need to see anything more. I'm not going to watch any other trailers. Come July 10th, I'm watching it, and you guys will definitely get a review from me. So the last trailer we're going to talk about is coming from former 21st Century Fox. Now, under the Disney umbrella, it's the Kingsman, continuing in Kingsman franchise from Matthew Vaughn, based on the comic books written by Mark Miller. So this one stars. This one's a prelude or a prequel to the Kingsman movies that we got. Kingsman Part 1 and 2. We starred Taron Egerton. So this one stars Ralph Fiennes, Harris Dickerson, Jimon Honsu, Gemma Atherton, Stanley Tucci, Daniel Bro, amongst others, and it's going to open in cinemas on the 17th of September. So what do you guys think of this trailer? And it's open on the 17th of September. Will you go see it on its release date? Let's start with Christian.
It's possible. I'll go see it on its release date. It really depends on what's going on, in the United States at that point, and where I live too. If locally our infection rate is fairly low, then maybe by September my wife and I will both feel more comfortable to go to see this in the theaters. I would see this in the theaters though. Kingsman 1 and 2 was really good. Both those movies were really good. Matthew Vaughn is a freaking mess in one of the best ways possible. I mean, he's all over the place. He knows how to have that cool blend of comedy, action, James Bond-esque, kind of feel to it. I think he does a really good job with it. Our fellow exile Manu calls him very problematic, but but he says it in a good way, and I agree with him. He just has that unique knack for blending that, comedy / action flair in a way that doesn't feel kind of cringy and overdone, and he does it really well. So I like this movie's take on kind of like an alternate history. Like World War I still happened, but it's the way we want it to make you think it happened. Like the Kingsmen were created during that time, and they obviously were playing around in the background, and you're getting all these like real world people like Rasputin that are going to be larger than life characters and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm always a big fan of those retellings of history and just kind of having fun with it. And if you liked the first one and the second one, this looks like it's going to be a continuation of the insanity that those first two movies were. So yeah, count me in. This was definitely this is probably the most fun trailer of what we watched.
All right. So, Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I like this look of this. I haven't seen the first two. The first one I just didn't grab me. The second one I actively didn't want to see. The third one, for some reason, I like the look of this. It looks stylized. It looks a little ridiculous, but it looks fun and it looks entertaining. And it's making me question why I didn't want to see the first two now. So you know what? Maybe I'll go back and give the first two a chance. I've heard the first is better than the second. The second just didn't look great to me, but who knows? Maybe my opinions don't necessarily always agree with the majority. So I do think I'll go back and watch those. As of right now, I don't think this is something I'll go to the theater for. But if I get through the first two and find that I enjoy them enough that I want to see this one, I'll watch this one on home release. And the trailer itself, it was good. I mean, it got me interested enough that it makes me want to go back and watch two movies I didn't really care to see before. So that's saying something.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I like the trailer. I thought. I mean, Matthew Vaughn makes good movies. It's funny. Manu and I we have this thing we say about him. He's like a bootleg or a diet or a knockoff Guy Ritchie. That's
Yeah,
the way.
yeah,
That's the way we see
Yeah,
him.
he's got the same style for sure.
Yeah, kind of like an imitation Guy Ritchie, but he's a little bit more crass, less refined, less crafty, but still in the same ballpark. Basically, if you don't want the super expensive, luxury version, you can get the Walmart version. It does the same thing. It just doesn't have the aesthetic differences. Anyway, that's just me being a little snide about it, which is unfair. He is a good filmmaker. Like, one thing I know about his films is that although I don't love any of them, I don't hate any of them. I can't remember a Matthew Vaughn film I saw and I was like, this is absolutely terrible. This is bad filmmaking. His films are going to start well, have a good middle, have a good ending. They're going to have, decent action. They're going to have, a balance between being serious and being lighthearted and adventurous and funny and thrilling and dangerous and all that kind of stuff. I just don't find it to be particularly spectacular filmmaker. And that's the same sense I got from this trailer. It's nothing out of character for him. It's in his same wheelhouse. So for that reason, I wasn't super excited about it because because I know the filmmaker, I knew exactly what to expect. So for this one, I'm not going to see it in theaters except if I have nothing better to do. I get invited to the movies, or probably if there's another movie that comes out at that time, which I must see, then if I have the time, I might do a double bill, see this. It'll give me a good chance to sort of review it for our audience, that kind of thing. Um, but also, I'm a little bit tapped out on the whole Kingsman storyline. It's nothing super exciting there for me, especially being a James Bond fan. What I'm looking forward to in my spy movies is the original, the pioneer, the granddaddy of them all, the one who inspired all of these. My anticipated spy movies that I'm into right now are the Bonds and the Mission Impossibles.
hmm
Like those are the only ones that have me excited. Now, when this comes out on home release, or this digital, whatever it is, as soon as it comes out, I'm 100% sure I'll see it. It looks like something that I don't want to miss, but not something that I'm desperate to go see in theaters. So that's our final trailer for the day. Let's do a little bit of a wrap up, guys. Tell me what was the most impactful one for you, and then also what was your favorite one. Let's start with Paul.
Most impactful was Greyhound, because it surprised me how much. It just surprised me by how cinematic it was and how much it made me want to see it. Whereas before it was kind of a maybe I'll get to it movie. Now it's I can't wait till July 10th. Which was my favorite, probably Foundation, because it's so right up my alley, and it reminds me, it's subject matter I like from people I like. It looks like it meets my highest expectation, and it reminds me of my father's interest in the subject matter as well. So it's got a nostalgia to it, even though I haven't read the books. It's a book I remember seeing on my dad's bookshelf as a kid, and here it is brought to life with modern technology and what looks like at the highest production value. So Greyhound and Foundation, for different reasons, really blew me away.
Nice. And Christian?
Well, I told you guys before, I spoiled a little bit. Probably Greyhound is my favorite that we watched. It was, just the score, everything about it, going into that period of history. Tom Hanks, hello. So it was probably my favorite trailer. But most impactful would be Foundation. I was very pleasantly surprised by this. For prestige TV, sci-fi that's really going after very high ideals. Not keeping it in the space opera category, like really trying to go for something above and beyond. I was surprised by Foundation and how much it actually tugged at my strings to say, do I want to sign up for another streaming service? Like I said, I don't think I'm going to do it now. But man, it almost made my, the trigger finger get a little itchy there to start getting ready to pull it. So yeah, that was definitely the most impactful for me.
Well, the only trailer that didn't really do too much for me was the Kingsman trailer. Apart from that, I'd say all the trailers did a really good job. Their marketing team should be proud. We're eating good. We got good stuff coming up on the horizon. The most impactful for me was definitely Greyhound. Like Greyhound for me, I went from 0 to 100 like real quick. This is, like you guys know, I say all the time, I'm not the biggest fan of biopics. It's just not my thing. It's like, I don't know, anytime anyone says something's a biopic or it's based on true stories, it's immediate like sleeping pills for me. Like I start snoring even before I know what it is. But this really hyped me up. Like I can't wait to see this. This is really good. As I said, just the way it balances between, we're gonna get like super tense, heart pounding action and a real like great emotional story, and obviously prestige. Like everything is on point. My favorite was the Snyder Cut teaser. I just can't, like, honestly, like, and that has a lot to do with the emotion of it. Okay, the emotion of it, the fact that we campaigned for so long, so hard, and had so much faith against all odds for something, and then this teaser is it further just every single thing we see further solidifies, like it's almost like you're in a waking dream, and this teaser is like, no, it's actually happening. Like it really is happening, and so it just watching just puts a smile on my face. It's a weird, surreal feeling to know that we're actually getting this mythical, soon to be legendary Snyder Cut.
You do have to pinch yourself still. There are days where you're like, oh yeah, shit, we really are getting it.
Like really,
after 2.5 years, it's really happening.
Really,
it's
wow.
something.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Okay, so well, there it is for our coming soon section, and that is our episode of E&M for the day. I thank you very much for listening to this, for engaging with us. We're so happy to do this podcast and vibe with you guys and converse with you guys. Without you guys, we'll be nothing. We'll just be talking in the wind. But you guys, you give us the energy and the passion to keep going at this. So on our way out, we would like to say our goodbyes. So Christian, you can start. Where can the people find you on social media to say goodbye?
Echoing your thoughts too, man. Everybody out there, please, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll get through this. 2020 is a really messed up year. So, just support one another, and hopefully us here at the Exiles, hopefully we're giving you guys a little bit of a welcome distraction from everything that's happening in the real world. You can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at the same place. I'm at chart6363.
Nice. And Paul?
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. Stay safe, hang in there. It's I know it's getting hard to continue with the social distancing, especially as summer comes around. But stay safe, do what you can, hang in there, and Hopefully we can do something to help do our little part to help entertain you during this break. As always, you can reach me on Twitter at _Paul_P. And we'd love to engage in conversation with you, or you can always leave a comment on YouTube. We're happy to converse there as well.
Nice. And I've been yours truly, Lupe. You can find me at Live Love Lupe on Twitter and at Live Love Lupe on the various social media app. We have been the Film Exiles. You can find us on Twitter at the Film Exiles. You can also find us on the various social media app at the Film Exiles. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, remember to stay exiled.